Welcome back to the seat across from us. I'm your host, Gonzalo Palafox, and I am beyond excited for today's episode because I have someone incredibly special sitting from me, and that's my Tia Nessa. Now, if you've been listening, or if you know me personally, you probably have heard me mention my Tia Nessa many, many times before. She's not just my aunt, she's my rock, my biggest supporter, and honestly, as I've always said before, my literal guardian angel. There have been many moments in my life where I didn't know how I'd get through, whether it was personal struggles, tough decisions, or just life feeling overwhelming. We know that very well, don't we, Tia? Every single time, my Tia has been there for me with open arms and, might I say, wise words too. Today, she's here to share the story, so I hope you're ready. Buckle up because it's going to be such an adventure. So, without further ado, let's introduce her. So, Tia Nessa, welcome to our podcast. How you feeling?
A little nervous, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to help you and share a story for everybody to kind of see if they can either relate or probably not. A lot of my stories, they're a little out there. We're not gonna lie.
They're a little out there, yes, but they are very fun to hear, to be honest.
Yes, kind of have a little bit of an idea of the stories that I would like to share. I know Gonzalo has probably um, told a little bit about me to his colleagues or
Or my
his
friends.
your friends. Um, so I think in life, you kind of realize that you go through things that obviously shape you. I think for me, the biggest moment in my life that shaped me was actually losing your grandma. Because that was the first emotional milestone that we had as a family, of course. Of course, we had lost uncles and aunts before, but no one like the pillar of our family.
Well, without further ado, let's get into that story.
Your abuelita, she was such an amazing, beautiful soul. Um, she was difficult, just like me. As anybody who has ever met my mom will know that uh, she was a very kind person, but you didn't want to piss her off because she she did get a little aggressive. Um,
She's feisty, I will
she
say,
was
but we love
feisty.
that. We love that. What is so interesting about my grandma that just like is wow to you? I like will say I don't have much memories of my grandma, which I wish I did, but with moving away to Washington, only you guys can help pick up the pieces. I've heard many stories, but I think it's very important that our audience listens to the stories as well.
Right. I feel like your grandma, the story that shaped me the most with your grandma was, and I don't want to talk bad about my father, because my father, of course, we are nobody to judge our parents. As I've grown older, I know that that has been a very big part of my life. But not, I just want to make it clear that I'm not, I don't want to talk bad about my father. But this is what I remember as far as stories with my mom that kind of shaped me into the person who I am today. Um, So I remember the first time my mom came home. Um, and keep in mind that when this happened, um, there was nothing like it before. Like there was no arguments between my parents. There wasn't where I would say that I constantly saw my parents fighting because it wasn't a thing that happened in my household. But the night that we found out, of course, that your grandpa was being unfaithful to my mom, that was the first time I had ever seen a side of my mom which was not only vulnerable, I saw anger, disgust, disappointment. Because how do you explain 40 years of marriage and down the drain? Um, but that's not where the story ends. So, your grandma went through quite a bit with your grandfather. I actually remember having a conversation with your grandfather regarding um, how he would feel if his daughter had married someone like him. Which I'm not going to say my dad is a bad dad. He's a great dad. He was always a provider. But as far as husband wise, he could have done a lot better.
What do you mean by that? I, how are you a good father but not a good partner?
You can be a great father to your kids as far as you're there, you listen to them, you give them advice, you help them out, and you hope that the advice that you've given them will either help them or kind of make them think enough to watch what they're doing as far as like making different choices, especially if it's the right or wrong choice. I know for my dad, I say he's a good dad because, like I said, um, in my household, he was the provider. I have vivid memories of my dad coming home from work, working 12, 14-hour shifts just to put food on the table. I know that he would get home and he would sit in like one of these big lazy boy chairs and he would come up to me and be like, Mija, can you take my boots off? And I would go and take his boots off. Um, but as far as like being a husband came, and I know there's a lot of men out there. It's not just my dad. I know that a lot of men out there are a better father than they are a man, honestly. Um, there's things that I guess as a father, you know that you can't cross with your kids. And then there's also, I mean, I kind of dove into his mentality a little bit, but it all comes down to men are just pigs. That's all it is. I'm sorry to say that. But
I mean, I
there
can't.
are,
I will say
there
it's
are,
true.
yeah, there are a few out there that are great men. My husband is one of them. I can
Oh,
testify there.
I love him so much.
Um, but that's what I mean. Like, there, I feel like some men are able to separate lives, kind of live two different lives. Like, you're one person with your kids and you're one person with your wife.
Hmm.
And that's
Explain
kind of,
more. Wait, why would you want like is there a reason as to why you're saying that specifically? Or like cuz I'm trying to like understand from your point of view just how it's coming across, you know. When I think of like, me being a man, again, we're all pigs. I'm sorry to say to everyone that's out there. I can accept it myself, but also like it's all about understanding the other person as well. And I'm just like, all right. So Tia's saying this. How can I get into her head so that I can understand from my point of view just how like it's coming across.
well,
Why do you need to separate two?
for example, um, I guarantee half of the people you come across are not the same person that they are with you than with their family.
Hmm.
Everybody has um, certain things that they want to show to certain people.
True.
Just like I know, I know when it comes to me, I'm a very completely different person when it comes to speaking to my family, as far as speaking to my best friend. I know, I know that your Theos completely act different in front of their friends, and then act different over here with their family. It's just I feel like people tend to separate. I feel like nobody can actually know how raw you are unless you yourself are willing to show that to them. But you're only willing to show that to certain people.
True. This is true.
Like
Okay.
like I'm only vulnerable with my husband and my best friend and my sister. Those are my three. And if I'm not vulnerable with any of them, that means that I just don't want to share anything with anybody and I'm going to keep that to myself.
I mean, but I also feel like when it comes to your nieces and nephews, you're also very vulnerable with them too. And it's not like you're being vulnerable, it's you're being accepting of what's going to come across when we tell you something. Because I feel like you know every single detail of every single one of your, like, nieces and nephews, which is crazy, by the way. But,
When it comes to my nieces and nephews, I have always tried to be uh, the tia that I wanted growing up.
mm,
When
what
it
dia
comes
is
to
that?
a, a tia who would not only have your back, who would stand up for you, who would advocate for you, just like I have advocated for you, right?
Many times, many times.
I have advocated for a lot of you guys when it comes to your guys' parents. Um, and I don't um I feel like we forget when we grow up, I feel like when we grow up and we have our kids, we forget that we were once kids. Like we once made the same mistakes. We once had the same mentality. And for me, it comes to a point where um if one of my nieces and nephews comes to me and tells me, "Hey, Tia, you know what? This and this and this happened. I don't know what to do. I can't tell my dad." Okay, I will help you out the best that I can, give you the best advice that I can. Obviously, you already told me I can't tell your parents, so I will keep that to myself. But if I feel like you need more help, then I will intervene
Yes, when needed.
when needed. Yes, if I feel like you are in the wrong, I will tell you you're in the wrong. Um, but I think what has helped me in life is that I've been able to see both sides. Like, and I don't mean like, oh, I understand everybody's hustle. It's I try to understand the best that I can each person's side because everybody's feelings are valid, right? There are some
Hmm.
feelings out there where it's like, no, you're wrong, and I will tell you straight up, you're wrong. But
In
um,
the nicest way possible, you know?
in the nicest way, I'll try to reword it, but it'll still come as you're wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Eventually we'll get to that point, you know?
Yeah. Um, but I would say that the way that I was raised and the things that I went through as a child did shape me quite a bit as far as the way we were raised. So one thing about your grandma is she hated the fact that we were constantly at each other's throats, which till this day still happens. We're like cats and dogs. Um, but she always told us that because we're family, we shouldn't be fighting. Or she always said that when we were fighting and it was better to just let the other person be mad and you walk away. Her saying was, vale más que haya un loco y no dos. That was always her saying. Um, and we live by that, honestly. I live by that. So I don't know if you've ever, I'm pretty sure you have. You've seen me argue with my siblings. Once I
Yes,
reach to,
many times.
yeah, once I reach a point where you're not understanding me and we're not having an actual conversation and we're just yelling and insulting each other, it's time to walk away.
Hmm.
So I know that that has a lot to do with your grandma. And honestly, your grandma was the one who made me who I am today. When she passed, we had barely started talking again. So you kind of know my story as far as my ex goes.
Well, without further ado, let's get into that story.
When I had stopped talking to my mom because of my ex boyfriend, um, it was literally like 10 months before she passed.
Mm.
And then um, before she passed in September. I started talking to my mom. I stopped talking to her September of 2018. Yeah. So I stopped talking to her September of 2018. But not only her, I cut everybody off. I cut this whole family off. And I spoke to nobody. And it wasn't until either January or February of 2019 that I started talking to my mom again. And I remember the day that I came to apologize to my mom. I couldn't even get the words out, honestly. When I pulled up to, because I wasn't living here anymore, when I pulled up to the front, your abuelita was already outside because that's what they do here. They just like to spend time outside and conversate and be with each other, right? So that day she was already outside. Um, and I remember walking up. I couldn't even look her in the eye. I just, with my head down, walked up and started bawling my eyes out. And I just said, "I'm sorry, Mom." And she accepted me. She accepted me because she always said that no matter what, we were always her kids. No matter what we did to her, she was always going to love us and she was always going to be there with open arms, which is the, which is why I try to be like her. And I try not to judge anybody. I try not to hold grudges because I know that everybody goes through their life. And I know that sometimes you're going through life and you have things that are piling up on you and you want to take it out on everybody. I know because I've done it where I'm having a terrible day and I go and I take it out on your deal. Just last week, I went off on your deal because I was having a bad day, but it wasn't his fault. But I recognized that, and I told him, you know what? I'm sorry. I had a bad day. That's not your fault. That's mine. And I feel like because of the simple fact that this family, and I say this family, and I'm not trying to bash anybody. Let's get that straight. We fight with each other and we don't apologize. We just start talking again. And I feel like that's a problem with a lot of families out there. I don't say that we're the only ones. I feel like there's a lot of families out there, or just a lot of people in general, who will argue, and instead of saying sorry and admitting that they were wrong, they just start talking again because nobody wants to. Everybody knows that you guys miss each other, but no one wants to say that they were wrong.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think our family can't really apologize and just go on like there's nothing wrong in the world?
I feel like it comes back to my dad.
Mm.
And again, I don't want to bash your grandpa, but I remember I remember when everything was happening as far as the infidelity went. And I remember this time that your grandma, she literally was crying and yelling at me and telling me, um, well, aren't you going to tell him something? He's your dad. Tell him something. And I looked at my dad and right on, like, I just had to look at his face. And I told her, I was like, what's the point, Mom? I was like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. I was like, if he honestly cared, then he would stop doing what he's doing. but he just doesn't. And because your abuelito till this day refuses to take any responsibility as far as how he hurt my mom, we know that he loved her. That was the love of his life. We get it. I know that love back in the day is a little bit different than the love we see and feel today. Um, but I have a lot. I feel that this family in particular is not able to admit their wrongs because our father was never able to.
So, to all the listeners out there, we've kind of gotten to an endpoint to the story, but I mean, the story's not over, but it started off on something. Like, what do you think is very important that comes out from the story you just told?
I feel the things that um, self-reflection
Mm,
is the main thing that I guess I'm trying to come across, because I feel like a lot of us in this country and just in this world as a general, we don't self-reflect. We don't we don't like to see ourselves in a bad light. Just like you don't want to see self-reflection in a person is probably the most important thing, because only you know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Um, I know that I've had to set a lot of boundaries when it comes to family or friends in general, because of the simple fact that I've reflected, how does this person benefit me, or how do I benefit them, or are they taking advantage of me? Am I the one that's taking advantage of them? Do I look at them a certain way? Like maybe it was
mm-hmm.
me who said something that caused them to react this way. I feel like self reflection and self awareness of who you are is um, very important, because I feel like we forget to look and judge ourselves first. Everybody judges you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Somebody looks you down the street, you have like this SpongeBob shirt. You're probably like one of the goofy goobers going on.
Hey,
Like
but that's a cool shirt. What are you talking about?
I know, but but let's as human beings, that's a natural reaction, Like if we
Hmm.
see somebody at Target that's wearing something out of the blue that you would never wear, you're gonna judge that person.
Whether you're like consciously thinking about it or if you're not, like to say it out loud or something.
Yeah, either subconsciously or consciously, you're doing it.
Exactly.
Um, so I feel like if you're okay with judging other people, then you should be able to judge yourself.
Say
And
that
that's where I
loud for the
feel,
people in the back.
yeah, well, if you're able to judge other people, then you should be able to judge yourself. And that's why I feel like self-reflection and self-awareness is a key point in growing up and
Do
living
you
life.
like know a time frame of when it happens, or is it just like by experience? I know everyone is different, but
I feel like I feel like it's something happens in your life that makes you realize that
oh
you
shit.
can't. Yeah. So I think in my life I've had many oh shit moments. I had an oh shit moment when I left the house at, I believe I was 20 at the time when I left, 1920. Um, I didn't come back home until after your grandma passed, and I was already 24 years old. But
Which there's a
again,
was that a 4 year
um,
gap?
a 4 year gap. Um,
Would you say those 4 year gaps were the hardest like time in your life?
it was definitely the most challenging time in my life.
Like what would you
Um,
say? Did you
I've
self-reflect a lot in those last 4 years?
No, I mean, in
Hmm.
these last 4 years, yes, because these last 4 years have been different. I've been married to your Theo. The four
Mm-hmm.
years before your Theo, I did not self reflect, and that's the reason why I went through. what I went through. That's why I was willing to put up with what I put up with.
Well, without further ado, let's get into that story.
I was in a very toxic relationship. It was um, verbally abusive, physically abusive, um, emotionally abusive. And I thought it was okay because of the simple fact, again, we go back to our parents, you know,
Hmm.
when when uh, when I saw your grandma be okay with the things that your grandpa did, I felt like, okay, well, if I fight enough and I love him enough, then we can make this work. And that's not the case. And I feel like a lot of us women have examples, either daddy issues or mommy issues, that lead us down a path like that. Um, so for me, I guess it was more daddy and mommy issues because of their relationship.
Wait,
I thought it
okay.
was okay.
You're saying like mommy and daddy issues. Now I need to know myself. Dia, do I have daddy or mommy issues?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I feel like I have more mommy issues than I do daddy issues, but mm, it just made me think about like my relationship with my parents right now. They're not the greatest. You know that most of all, but hmm, interesting.
But it
Continue,
all
Thea.
comes
Sorry.
down to that. No, you're fine. Um, but that's why it comes down to. I know that because I saw that it was that she thought it was okay, or I guess maybe she didn't think it was okay, but and she didn't know that she was showing me that it was okay, but I still went through it. And
Mm,
um, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I didn't put my hands on my ex because I did. I'm the type of woman who gets even. I grew up with five brothers.
mm-hmm.
So
And you're also the youngest.
also the youngest, and I have the worst temper out of all of them. Um, so it was a very toxic and abusive relationship, and because um, so it was actually after your grandma passed that's when I started to reflect. Um, I had gone through a few different things in the week that I finally came home. For instance, he was no longer working. I was paying all the bills. I was
Ooh,
working. Um, there was times where I was getting to work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Wasn't getting home till like 7 or 8. I was getting.
were
Um,
were you expected to clean and cook as well, Thea?
um, I wouldn't say I was expected to cook and clean. I know that when I got home, my house was still a disaster. So, and if I didn't cook, then nobody was going to cook and we weren't going to eat. I will say that he did try a few times to cook. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to say that he didn't help some. There was times where
Yeah.
he felt bad enough and he would cook before I would get home, or if he felt like he was a douche to me that day, then I would get home to a clean house. But it always had to be, he had to feel bad in order for me, in order for something to get done.
Hmm, interesting.
But I think that the main thing that played out when we split up was the fact that your grandma passed. And I felt like I couldn't grieve my mom because every time I grieved her or every time I cried for her, um, he brought up his trauma, which was losing the man who raised him, because it wasn't his biological father, it was his stepfather. And I think the most vivid memory that I have was actually 3 days after your grandma passed. I was actually driving to go pick something up. I forgot what it was. Um, and I had heard a song and I had started crying. And then he was he was like, well, why are you crying? It's not like you lost your money. It's not like you lost this. It's not like you lost that. Like, you still have your family. And I'm just like, it's not my fault what you went through when your dad passed. That's not my fault at all. Like, I wasn't even aware of you at that point in time. So how are you
Mm.
taking something out on me that I wasn't even a part of?
You gotta deal with your own issues first, buddy.
Exactly. So I feel like that had a lot to play in our splitting up. It was also, it was actually around your abuelita's. I don't remember if it was her anniversary or if it was her birthday. Um, the point is that that week, she actually came to me in a dream. She came to me in a
Do
dream
tell.
um, that week, and very calmly, we were sitting across from each other. Like, if I had came to visit her and she was drinking a cup of coffee, um, and very calmly, she just told me, Mija, what are you doing? Why are you putting up with this? Is this really the life you want to live?
Mm.
Do you want to continue working and supporting a man who not only blames you for things that have nothing to do with you, but also blames you because before this, again, remember I said that it was a very toxic relationship and we had a lot of domestic violence. Um, he
Mm.
blamed me for a night that things got way out of hand and I had to call the cops because um, he wouldn't let me leave. I was just trying to come home
Sure.
and he wouldn't
Mm.
let me leave. Um, so when he wouldn't let me leave, I had to call the cops, which ended up getting him a charge. So when we split up, he said that he couldn't work and he couldn't get certain jobs because of the simple fact that now he had a charge on him and jobs wouldn't hire him. I feel like it was just an excuse not to work because I have met a lot of people, even with worse charges than him, that have been able to change their life around and make and have a good job. When she came to me and she told me that, um, I woke up and I woke him up and I said, listen, we need to talk. Um, this isn't working anymore. Like, we've tried. I'm exhausted. I'm pretty sure you're exhausted. I don't have anything left to give you. Like, I will continue to work and you can continue to stay in the apartment. I'll go home to my dad. Uh, we'll figure it out from there. But then he convinced me to, like, co stay with him, like,
Ooh. Yeah.
to co live in this apartment together while not being together. But the problem with that was that when we had that um, party for your grandma, I didn't go home that night because of the simple fact that I had gotten really drunk um, and I was having a great time with my family. So I didn't end up going home that night. The following day, I didn't find my phone until about 5 o'clock the next day, um, which was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, not in the morning. And by the time that I answered and charged my phone, I had death threats. I had voicemail after voicemail and text message after text message just calling me all these different types of names. So I picked up my phone and I told him, I'm not coming home. I will be there another day to pick up my stuff. So he chose to burn all my crap and throw it in the trash. So I had to restart. The only thing that I left with in that relationship was my ID, my birth certificate, and my social,
I
and the
know.
clothes on my back.
You couldn't even take your dog either. That's where it gets me. The dog. Or the
Yeah,
dogs? Wait, was it dogs or dog?
dogs. I had two. So I had a blue pit named her name was Ruby. That dog
Mm.
I give my heart out to. Um, and I had another one who was actually a Chihuahua, and
Oh, you had a Chihuahua? Whoa.
I did. I had a few Chihuahuas in my lifetime. I did. I don't know what it
I
was
love.
with Chihuahuas, um, but I think maybe because we're from Chihuahua, we just like Chihuahuas.
I feel like it's such a Latino kind of thing to have Chihuahuas.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why we just like the little
You know,
mole rats. Um, but yeah, I had a Chihuahua. Those dogs were in my life. Unfortunately, in one of the times that I left, because I had tried to leave him one time before. I had actually taken him to your Theo Lorenzo's house, and he did not let me know that his gate in the back was broken. They ended up getting out. The Chihuahua ended up dying because your Theo obviously lives right next to a big street. So she tried to follow the pity and ended up getting ran over. I never was able to find my pit bull, never found her dead anywhere. I'm pretty sure somebody picked her up because she was a beautiful dog. Um, so I'm pretty sure somebody picked her up. But I was I was very hurt because um, that dog had gotten me out of so many different things. She actually defended me quite a few times when it came to him. Um, that's another reason why he would either beat them or put them in the cage. Yeah, very, very, very toxic relationship your Thea went through. But it shaped her.
I feel like it also, that's what I was gonna say, it shaped you a lot into
It
this
did.
new relationship that you have. That is by far thriving, by the way. Congrats.
Yes. I'm just gonna say that when you move from a toxic relationship to a healthy relationship, you kind of try to take some of those toxic traits with you.
Hmm.
And let me tell you that that's not it. So, my husband, when I met him, I had toxic traits because of my previous relationship, and he just wouldn't deal with my shit. He wouldn't. So, we would get into an argument, and I'd be like, well, I'm done with your shit. And he was like, okay, bye. I wasn't used to that. I was used to like, you're going to argue with me. And he wasn't,
Or
he's not the type of
or
person
throw
that's going
hands
to
in the
argue with
air.
you. He's
He's
not.
not. He's so
He will not
he's
fight with you. He will not entertain the idea of a fight with you. He's not going to. My husband is very much nonchalant is the best way that I can explain him.
And I know we can save that story for next time because I don't even know like how he grew up and how like his perspective on everything. Um because we're getting short on our time. So
Yeah.
there are a couple more things. I'm gonna say like what I learned specifically from this story. Starting for the very beginning. Thank you very much, Thea, for opening up yourself to have another conversation. I know these spaces are not as easy to open up to. It feels like you're just having a conversation with your nephew, but this is going to get published on the internet. So it's a little more of a step. Yes, you are talking to me. I've heard these stories many times, but I again will listen to you for many hours because you have my heart. You have what I wish my parents had in them. That specific thing about self-reflection is so funny that you don't have to go through therapy to figure that out. I've had to go to therapy to figure out, oh, I why am I this way? Because I'm hot-headed as well. What I tell people is when I am mad at you, it feels like you're walking into a battlefield. These analogies suck so much, but I'm a teacher, so who cares? Um, and that's like I have to self-reflect. There's like this one problem that I had that I just couldn't see it through, where like again, I thought that I was in the right, but then it took a couple days, like you said, yeah, for me to be able to be like, oh shit, I messed up. Now, how do I have this conversation with this person and be like, all right, I know I did wrong. What can I do to try to earn, back your trust or earn this back or whatever it might be that happened? And I was like, a part of me wonders if it's just like the Latinas just in general. Maybe that's just something we all go through. Who knows? Maybe it's just a family thing. I don't know. But yeah, the talking to you, it's been such a journey. And again, I've spent what feels like forever with you, but I know that obviously our time isn't done yet. I so wish that I would have had my Tia Nessa when I was a kid. I think having, my family separated from me when I went to Washington State was a little hard. And like a little part of me is like mad at my parents for, splitting apart, but I mean, I can't do anything to fix it. So I just want to say thank you very much. The next thing we're going to talk about is just some moments that me and you, have spent together. Well, without further ado, let's get into that story. We're not gonna end this episode with the just a trauma dump was what's gonna happen. We're gonna talk about what makes Dianessa and Gonzalo just so unique. And with that said, these last 5 years, ever since I came out in 2020 and I moved back to Arizona, you have been that support system. You've been such a big part of my life. So, so much. I cannot always stop appreciating how much you help me out just because you understand or you're putting yourself into my shoes and what it's like to be in my shoes. What's it like just watching your nephews and nieces grow up? It could be me, it could be the millions and millions of nieces and nephews you have. What's it like watching, them grow up, but then you also have we have Cassie, you have Joey, you have me, we're the distant ones. What do you think?
I feel like it's bittersweet. Um, because I hate watching you guys grow up because of the simple fact that makes me feel like I'm getting old, which I am. Um, but I find it sweet because I'm seeing you guys do things that nobody in this family has ever done. Like you. There is nobody in this family that has traveled as much as you. There is nobody in this family who has just been like, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want. I'm going to go for it. And you did that. Another one of my nieces is Lily. I love the fact that um, she works hard to. She's going to become a dental assistant. I think that it's fantastic. I love watching the things that you guys grow up to do. Even the simple things like becoming a mom, or uh, or just the win in your life. That makes me happy. If it makes you happy, it makes me happy because of the simple fact that I'm here rooting for you guys. That's my job as your aunt. As your tia, it's my job to root for you guys, to be your number one supporters, and I'm all for it, honestly. Like I said, it's bittersweet just watching you guys grow up, um, because it makes me feel old, but I love seeing everything that you guys are doing. I love that you guys are bringing out a different type of you guys are setting a different bar for my kids,
The next
and
generation that
the
I
next
will be
generation.
teaching.
Exactly. So I feel like you guys are doing better than where we were at, which is what we try to do, right? As a family, you try to do better than the next generation. And I feel like you guys are rocking that.
Well, hopefully. I mean, we've had, again, all our experiences to try to help us and break, as people like to call the generational chains, because it's not an easy thing. And now we're going to move on to the next question. For me, I will answer this because it says, what's one memory you have of us that stands out? And the one moment that does is all those like all I don't know, just that connection I just feel with you. All the conversations that we've had in your truck or in your car. I remember when I was working at like Burger King and Walmart, and after work, me and you would go to like the Habit, and that specific thing of you just teaching me around, you took me to downtown Phoenix for the first time. Whenever I wanted something, you would be like, "All right, mijo, let's go get it." Those things. And then the one memory that I will always stick out is you having a room open for me to work at Discover Financial Services, which I'm not the best at that job. You know that very well because you were hearing it. But that experience, being able to move into your house, being able to, be 100% me without any judgment, I guess, in one sense, from you and from Theo, it felt like in a sense you guys were the parents, which you were because I wasn't fully 18 at that point. But then after,
Well,
but yeah, that those are like some of the memories that I still carry with me. Again, I talk so highly of you when I am speaking to my friends, being like, "Oh yeah, my tia is doing this," or "My tia does this." When I have to like do this, or she goes and picks me up from the airport, she goes and does this. She goes out of her way to make sure that all her nieces and nephews feel the love that we so, I guess, desire in a way.
yeah, because you see the memes on social media where it's like, oh, when my nephew calls me and he's at a party and I'm gonna go pick him up, I'm that Thea. I'm the Thea that will
Yeah.
break it down on the dance floor with you before taking your ass home. Um, I'm that Thea. And like I said, I've always tried to be that Thea for you guys, not only because we're so close in age. Let's face it. What Marisa's literally 11 months, 2 weeks younger than me. Cassandra's a year. Um, like it's I know that I've grown up closer to you guys because of my age, and I'm thankful for that. It kind of sucked at the beginning because it's like, what the hell? Like you have somebody calling you Tia, and you're like, she's like a year like younger than you. Yeah, it happens, it happens. But again, I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for being able to grow up with you guys and being able to be that Tia for you guys.
It's been nice having you in my corner, just cheering me on. I think I'm very happy that in some sense you have my high school diploma, as high school
And
and
I
now
still have
soon
it.
college. And soon college in a year, feel free to take that one too. I'm pretty sure it would mean much
I
more
love
to
it.
you than it would to me having the plaque being like, oh,
I have everything
bachelor.
you've given me. I have your high school diploma. I have your certificate that you gave
Oh
me.
yeah.
I still have that. For me, when it comes to you, I claim you as my son. You were my practice child before I had my actual kids.
Yeah.
Um, and although you came to me when you were already older, um, I've constantly tried to check up on you, Joey, Cassandra. I've always tried to check up on you. I know that I don't check up a lot, especially within the last year, because obviously, I am struggling with the loss of my son. But I try to reach out as much as I can, and I try to keep up. Just because you think that I don't text you all the time, I am constantly checking your location to see where you're at, making sure you're either at school or at work, or I'm just being at school, especially with everything that's going on in the world. I get worried. Um, so yeah, just I know that when it comes to you, I don't. Even if I don't send you a text message, like I said, I'll check your location just to make sure you're good. Um, but I always try to reach out as much as I can to my nieces and nephews because I know you guys have your own struggles. I know there's times where you guys feel like you guys can't talk to your guys' parents. Um,
Let's
and
say that's the majority of the time.
Yeah. So I just try to be that person for you guys. And I'm thankful that you guys have allowed me to be that person.
Well, I'm grateful that, you know, you are here. I'm pretty sure the people who listen to this podcast would want a Tia Nessa in every lifetime of theirs.
I mean, I can be everybody's Thea. I don't care. I already have 22. Let's add to the list.
You guys heard that. 22 is a lot. And again, still making sure each and every one of them feels safe. Again, I can't express my gratitude towards my Tia Nessa and her being actually the first guest on this podcast. With that said, we're going into the just a random quick Q&A for you, Thea. Um, and then after that, we're gonna finish it off. And with that, the first episode of the guest host is now officially over. Okay, so my first random question about you is what's a random fact that like no one knows about you?
A random fact that nobody knows about me. I got my appendix taken out when I was like 6.
Whoa, not even I knew that. Okay, next question. If you could relive any day in your life, no matter what it is, which one would it be?
The birth of my first son.
And this one is cheesy, but describe me in 3 words.
You're intelligent, you're outgoing, and you're kind hearted.
I might have to use those next time someone says, "Oh, describe yourself in 3 words." I like those. All right.
That's the
Well,
way I
with
would
that
describe you.
said, thank you, Thea. I
Of
appreciate that
course.
very much. With that said, we're going to end up finishing off everything we've gone through today. We started a little, like, we got a lot of sidetracked, but I hope that everything you heard in this episode is very heartwarming, eye opening to everyone that comes across this episode. I'm going to listen to this episode many, many times. I love storytelling. I love the way my aunt could tell a story. It is very awesome and very nice from this side of the camera, where we may be 3,000 miles away from each other, but the storytelling is still there. I feel like a kid going to bed and my aunt is giving me that bedtime story, a reflection of life. Or, now that I'm over 21, Thea, like we're at the bar just having a beer, or, I mean, me and you don't like beer too much, but, it might be like a Smirnoff or something. And I hope that those stories.
I'm with the
Nice.
twisted teas right now.
Twisted teas are really good. I had some yesterday. Um,
Hey,
And I hope that and I'm talking to everyone who's listening, I hope hearing this story and sharing my Thea's moments has been really powerful in some way. And we're going to be back with another episode in 2 weeks. This one might be coming out. Well, there's a lot of editing that goes into this episode. I'm going to give, maybe a minute or two for my Tia Nessa to say her closing remarks, whatever it might be. And then from there, we'll close the seat across from us for today. Go for it, Tia. These last 2 minutes, what do you got for us?
I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. I know I did get sidetracked a little bit, but I hope that I was able to either make you think a little bit or just at least have a laugh. I know that storytelling is a very difficult thing to do, especially when you've gone through so many things that have shaped you. And I also didn't want to give you guys too much of my trauma because I don't think we'd have enough time on a podcast for that. But
I mean, we could, it could be 10 hours.
but I'm appreciative of my nephew for inviting me on his podcast. I hope that it helps anybody who is struggling with trying to figure out what's going on in their life, or just kind of need somebody to have a conversation with. I hope that I've helped in some way. Um, and that's about it.
Well, thank you very much again, Thea. I will shout out my family. To my Rodriguez family, I love you guys very much. I know you guys are going to be listening to this because, Thea's on here. I love all you guys. I can't wait to go back to Arizona and see all of you guys and get lit like we always do. For now, again, I can't express how much I enjoy being a co-host or just I guess the main host and having a guest host on this podcast. I want to shout out all the people who are like constantly supporting me on my Facebook, who are constantly always on my Instagram, on TikTok. I appreciate all the support. I think from my last podcast to this podcast, it's taken a turn and for the better. I will say that 20, to you guys, 20 people listening to a podcast might not seem like a lot, but 20 people listening to me yap for 6 minutes is crazy. It's crazy. So, again, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Tia Nessa, for being here today. And I'll see you guys next time on The Seat Across from Us. Good night, good afternoon, wherever it might be. Bye bye, guys.